Mass Media.
The following episode contains topics intended for mature audiences.
KVOA Television 4 Tucson.
It's a lovely morning for a bike ride. 12 minutes after the hour of 6 o'clock. Good morning, Tucson. Today is Sunday, April 27th. Soviet authorities ordered the evacuation of Pripyat, a city of about 50,000 people, in response to the nuclear accident at the Chernobyl power plant.
And man's best friend learned some manners, dog obedience training, and more at Pima County College. We have that story and more after the break.
And now, the story of canines, a cold case, and my stepmother Shirley forgetting it all. I'm Amanda Fallon, and this is the Shirley You Can't Be Serious podcast. Shirley's memoir is bringing healing and closure to so many stories. In this chapter of the story, we discuss all the loose ends and where the story settles them. Stories like cold cases that Shirley's life brings light to after being in the darkness for decades. In our visits with Eddie, he expressed, "I think healing is found in the talking of the pain." Healing comes through recounting the stages of Shirley's life and coming to realizations. Jamie's need to speak to Skaggs about Mount Lemmon after so many years. All those involved within the stories that never had their questions answered. The closure this brings to my dad as he grieves the life they shared. And my own need to conquer the fear of Stephen Skaggs.
Oh, life can be interesting sometimes, Mandy. Sometimes you don't want it to be too interesting. Boring sounds good. Boring is not bad. Really.
In episode 1, in the middle of all of the turmoil that was Shirley's life, another story was developing.
One in particular, Archer, was that the name?
Joan Marie Archer was
Yeah.
a bicyclist who
Right.
went missing in April in Tucson.
But since he got so many years, they just kind of let that go. But I was devastated.
It's still unclear the effect the Mount Lemmon incident had on Joan Marie Archer's case. At the time, it possibly overshadowed the case. But present day, the irony may lie in the fact that our knowledge of the two cases is what keeps the hope alive for solving it.
Live from the KVOA Broadcast Center, this is Channel 4 Action News.
Joan Marie Archer, 25, a petite blonde dog trainer, found serenity in early morning bicycle rides. She pedaled the same 12-mile route from her South Side home to Mission San Javier every morning. So when she didn't return from an early morning ride, April 27, 1986, her family knew something was wrong. Days later, her silver 12-speed was found undamaged and hidden under bushes 20 feet off South Mission Road. 3 months after Archer's disappearance, a hiker found her skeletal remains scattered near where her bike was found. An autopsy revealed she died of multiple stab wounds.
In exploring Shirley's story, I repeatedly cross paths with Joan Marie Archer. While other people become involved with researching her cold case, I have become interested in getting to know her as a person. I want to feel the love that Joan's people were filled with. And where are they in that search for closure? This is Keith. He was engaged to Joan in 1986.
Hi there.
Hi, Keith.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to let you know that I am recording this conversation on my Zoom mic.
No, that's fine. I don't mind.
Okay. So you were able to get a hold of the detective?
Yes.
How did that go?
We talked for a while, and it was actually pretty helpful because he helped me recall some things that I hadn't remembered. But he was the detective that took the cold case like 10 years ago.
Okay.
And worked on the cold case for a while. And he did some interesting things. You'll be able to reach out to him, and he said he'd be very, very happy to speak with you.
Keith is referring to Detective Bruce, who took over the Archer cold case in 2011. He did not want to talk. In fact, every detective involved in the Archer and Mount Lemmon cases didn't want to talk. A lot of the original officers have passed away. Detectives Gurkowski and Hardiman were two of the original investigators on the case. I found both of them and made attempts to connect. Detective Gurkowski was unreachable, and Detective Hardiman initially expressed interest in participating until she reviewed her files. She then refused, stating Skaggs was the most dangerous person she has ever met and declined to be interviewed.
And what is your connection to the case? See, here I am. You called to talk to me, ask me questions, and I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions.
That's fine. I have a really weird link to the case.
What? Yeah, you can tell me about it. But now my next question was, how the hell did you get my phone number?
Oh, I actually got it off the white pages.
Really?
Yeah, so I actually saw an article as I was researching the Mount Lemmon case. Joan Marie Archer's name just kept, anything in 1986, her name would just pop up in almost every article that was based on the Mount Lemmon case. Because they would link the two. They would be like, he's also a suspect in the disappearance of Joan Marie Archer. When I started on this journey, I quickly learned how interconnected the Mount Lemmon story and Joan's case were. Anywhere I searched for Mount Lemmon files, Joan appeared. Skaggs was the prime suspect, but was it really him? Or was it just his bad luck that they found Joan the day before the Mount Lemmon attacks? Either way, that week deeply impacted Shirley's life.
At the time of his sentencing, Skaggs was considered a suspect in Archer's homicide, even though forensic tests were inconclusive. Representatives from the Pima County Sheriff's Department did not provide any new information.
But I guess at the time, they actually had found her body. So he was the prime suspect.
They found her body the same day that he stabbed the two girls up on Mount Lemmon.
Yeah, and I guess the big similarity that they would talk about is the stab wounds are exactly the same. They went horizontally versus vertically.
There is one apparent link between the two cases. An affidavit filed in Pima County Superior Court said the stabbing wounds the victims received are similar. The results of the forensic exams are expected at any time from the FBI in Washington, D.C.
Dr. Alan Jones, the forensic pathologist that reviewed the injuries in the Mount Lemmon case and those found through Joan Archer's autopsy, was convinced they were related.
In my review, I made a series of peculiar observations and similarities. Through my training and expertise as a pathologist, I am noting these types of horizontal wounds, and also the location of these types of wounds being on the back area, are unique in character and rarely seen. The perpetrator possessed some working knowledge of the human anatomy, which is indicated by the method the wounds were inflicted to fit between vertebrae and ribs. It is my opinion that the perpetrator may have some type of training or possesses knowledge about the use of a knife. My name is Dr. Alan Jones. I'm the Chief Medical Examiner for Pima County.
Good evening. Today is April 18th, 1991. The man probably more familiar with death than anyone else in Pima County chose to take his own life this week. Dr. Alan M. Jones, Chief Medical Examiner for Pima and 12 other Arizona counties, was found dead Tuesday morning by Pima County Sheriff's deputies in a Northwest Side motel room. Sheriff Sergeant Richard Castigar said Jones, 44, had been reported missing by his wife, who told deputies she found a suicide note several hours after Jones left home at 9 a.m. Monday.
Joan Archer's case proceeded to be a series of unfortunate events. Evidence that was sent out for analysis was mishandled and lost. The FBI replied with devastating news.
Thank you for contacting the FBI field office regarding forensic examinations conducted by the FBI laboratory in the investigation of the homicide of Joan Marie Archer. In researching the FBI laboratory file associated with this case, we determined that former FBI laboratory examiner Michael Malone conducted forensic examinations at the request of your office. Please be advised that Examiner Malone was among the 13 examiners who were criticized in an April 15, 1997 report issued by the U.S. Department of Justice entitled The FBI Laboratory, an investigation into laboratory practices and alleged misconduct through review of allegations of wrongdoing and improper practices within certain sections of the FBI laboratory.
An Arizona man is free tonight after a D.C. Superior Court judge acknowledged he was wrongfully imprisoned. Donald Gates, who has always maintained that he was innocent of the crime, had been in prison for nearly 30 years until his release was ordered earlier this week. Gates had been convicted by evidence that was supposedly analyzed by an agent that has since then been discredited. Former FBI Special Agent Michael P. Malone's conduct was first exposed by famed FBI whistleblower Dr. Frederick Whitehurst. Dr. Whitehurst first revealed the widespread corruption at the FBI crime lab back in 1993 when he too was a lab employee. Whitehurst charged that crime lab employees were engaged in providing perjured trial testimony, among other acts of misconduct. A 1997 report from the Department of Justice's Office of the Inspector General validated Whitehurst's charges. Dr. Whitehurst revealed that Malone had perjured himself and falsified evidence when testifying during proceedings.
And just like that, one by one, details of Joan's case were evaporating. I was determined to at least keep her in the minds of those who knew her. I guess we could start today with maybe you just describing Joan and your relationship with her.
Wow. Wonderful, caring person. Over trusting. Our connection was dogs. And I met her through another woman in Tucson that I was working for back in the early 80s, doing a lot of dog training and stuff, and showing dogs professionally, handling dogs professionally. She went to U of A and graduated with a bachelor's degree, and she was a teacher.
She was pretty young, right?
Yeah. Well, I think she was born in maybe 62, 64, something like that. I'm not sure. I don't remember. Sorry, Joan. I probably should remember. But she was interviewing for teaching jobs when she went missing. She was going to go to some seminar in Phoenix, and I was going to come by and take care of her dogs for her, halfway through the day, let them out, do some things. And she also had a dog that had puppies. So, I was going to be over there, checking that out, make sure everything was fine. And when I got there, her bicycle wasn't there. Her truck was still there. Her house was basically wide open. And that's when I knew right away that, wait a minute, I knew she was going on a bike ride. And I'm like, she didn't come home. And so that's when, I knew right away something was up. But our relationship was good. I mean, we had rocky times just like everybody else. But it was really good. It was, I got along with her parents really well. Her brothers, that I had met, got along with them. They were a really good family. She was very religious and, went to Catholic Mass every week. But, most of our life was centered around showing dogs, training dogs, doing stuff with the dogs.
Yeah.
So,
well, you guys were engaged, right? To be married?
yes.
How long were you guys together?
I met Joan in 1984, 84-ish. And when we first met, we were really good friends for probably a year to a year and a half before a relationship started, before we ever became romantic.
So you guys didn't live together?
We did, at one point, right after we started together romantically, we did live together for a short period of time, and then we were kind of in a rocky point of our relationship, and I moved out, and then we had not moved back in together.
The newspaper described that she would normally go for bicycle rides, like 12-mile bike rides. Do you think she actually went for a bike ride that morning?
Oh yeah, she went for a bike ride. And she was abducted while she was on the bike ride.
Do you mind describing more about that day? Were you the one that notified law enforcement?
Oh yeah, I went over to her house. I told her that I would swing by and check on her dogs. And like I said, I went over there. And I knew she hadn't come back from her bicycle ride. So I immediately got in my in my truck and drove out to Mission, because that's where she would always ride to, is Mission Santa Maria. And so I drove all the way out and all the way back. Didn't see any signs of accidents or anything like that. I called the hospitals. There was only 3 of them at the time in Tucson, so it was pretty quick. And then after that, I called the sheriff's department, and I told them that what I had found, and I knew that something was up. And they were like, "Well, she hasn't been gone long enough. We can't do anything about it." And so I said, "Okay, when should I call back?" So I called them back later that evening, and finally got the ball rolling. They sent somebody by to take a report, and then they got a couple detectives over there that started questioning me. And so then, the investigation started rolling. I think that it was the next day, later in the day, that they found out where her bicycle was at.
This is Eyewitness News with Roger Grimsby and the Eyewitness News team.
Good evening. Law enforcement officials searched in vain for more than 3 hours yesterday for a 25-year-old Southwest Side woman who disappeared while on a bicycle ride Sunday morning. A sheriff's spokeswoman remarked that she didn't know why the search did not get underway until yesterday afternoon. Searchers from the sheriff's search and rescue team, aided by sheriff's detectives, dogs, and a Tucson helicopter, covered the route of Archer's daily ride. The search was to resume today at 7:30.
When the news broadcast hit the news, then these people called the sheriff's department and said, "Hey, we found this bicycle." And they set up a command post right there at that area. They were going to search the desert area, where they found the bicycle. And then I'm thinking it was the next day. They interviewed me for, a number of hours. And obviously, number one suspect, when somebody disappears. And they played that, number one suspect thing on me. And while I was sitting in the interview, I was wearing glasses. One of the detectives were like, "What's that on your glasses?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's on my glasses?" And I took my glasses off, and he took my glasses away from me and said, "We'll give these back to you tomorrow, maybe." He thought maybe it was a spot of blood or something on my glasses, and so he wanted to take them and have them analyzed. Anyway, so I finished the interview, went home, and went in my house, and like 15 or 20 minutes later, my dog started barking at my front gate. So I went out there, and the 2 detectives were standing out at my gate. And I walked out and said, "Hey, what's up, guys?" I mean, after it was all over with, I realized, they were just doing their job, but it was pretty ugly. But they were like, "We want you to come down and take a polygraph test." And I was like, "No problem. Whatever we need to do to move past me, because I'm not your suspect." And I was at the mission at the command post, and they finally brought my glasses back to me and said everything was fine.
Is your name Keith?
Yes.
Do you know Joan Archer?
Yes.
Did you see Joan anytime after Saturday, 8 p.m.?
But basically, as soon as I took the polygraph, then they quit focusing on me. Joan had no enemies. I mean, she was that kind of person. Everybody loved Joan. She was just as sweet as can be.
Were you notified that she had been found before you heard about the case on Mount Lemmon, or after?
Yes.
Before?
Yes.
And was she found out in that area that you guys were searching?
Yes, she was.
She was.
In fact, where they found her, we also went out there in quads. We rode all over the desert in quads trying to find any evidence of her or anything. And I actually rode a quad probably within 50 to 60 yards of where her body was found, and I never saw her.
Oh. Was she buried?
I think that maybe kicked some leaves and rocks and stuff on her, but it wasn't, he didn't dig a grave and put her in a grave. She was just underneath, I think she was underneath a mesquite tree or a sagebrush or something like that.
No story of our Southwest is complete without reference to the missions built in the early days to bring civilization and Christianity to pagan Indian tribes. One of the more colorful of these missions is San Xavier del Bac, located on the desert line 9 miles south of Tucson, Arizona. For more than a century and a half, this church has been a shrine for the Indians, descendants of the early native tribesmen who helped build it. Missions would be established with priest and native working side by side, building a house of worship where God's will was done.
San Javier Mission, an absolutely Arizona story 225 years in the making.
Legend says if the cat on the facade ever catches the mouse, the building or the world will end. The mouse being chased by the cat at San Javier has an advantage. The original craftsman gave the mouse eyes, but not the cat.
How far was she from San Javier Mission?
Oh, maybe a mile and a half.
How did you feel when you got the call that she'd been found?
Well, I was at work. I worked for, back then it was Hughes Aircraft, now it's Raytheon. I was an engineer for them. And I remember getting the call from RC, and he said that they had found a body in the desert, that it's not 100% confirmed that it's Joan, but he said it's Joan. And I just remember going home, and I was just like in a stupor. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react to it. I think about her often. Things happen in my life, and I go, Joan would have liked that. And so I miss her a lot. She was really special, but there's been no closure for me. I've never tried to put Joan out of my mind or out of my life, but I've tried to put the situation out of my mind and not think about what happened. So, things might come back to me, that I hadn't thought about, and I'll definitely reach out to you if it does.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. On May 9th, 2022, I met Keith in Tucson, Arizona. We met up at an EG's off of Irvington, where we had lunch together. After lunch, he took me to where Joan lived. We then traveled the same path she often took with her bike. We stopped off at San Javier Mission, and we visited the altar room where she would often pray. And then Keith took me a little bit further down to where Joan's body was found. Her body was actually found 3.5 miles from where her bike was found. I didn't know meeting with Keith that day would set me on a 2.5-year quest to try and solve Joan Archer's cold case. That same summer, I connected with Joan's sister Kathy and her nephew Roger.
My dad was in the military, and my mother grew up in the military. And she and my dad met in California, where he was stationed, and that's where they got married. I'm 15 years older than Joan.
Were you close with Joan?
I was close, but we never lived. We communicated a lot by phone or by letter. She spent a couple of summers here in Reno with us, so we stayed close that way. She was kind of the one I felt like after my mother died. I think she was the one that kind of kept us together.
Okay. Yeah, we found out that she trained dogs and loved animals.
She wanted a horse, and that's why she joined 4-H. But my parents bought her a dog instead of a horse. So that's how she became interested in dogs, and she loved them. And when we would come, my son was, I think Joan was around 10 when my son was born, and when we would visit in Arizona, Joan would kind of let Paul think he was telling the dogs what to do when actually she would be giving them signals. And I just remember he was so excited about that, thinking that he was making those dogs do all those things.
That's cool. So she was in Sierra Vista living with your father and your stepmother, and then she decided to move to Tucson?
Yes.
Okay. Was that because your other sister, Chris, was already living there?
No, I don't think that my stepmother and Joan got along. And I think my stepmother wanted her to move out, so she did.
Okay. So when you first heard that Joan was missing, how did you hear about that? Like, who called you?
My father called me, and it was the day after my birthday, and I had just gotten a birthday card from Joan. Anyway, my dad called me, and he said something like, Joan is gone, is what he said. I didn't, you know how, you just really don't get it at first. And then he explained to me that she had disappeared and they couldn't find her. And then I would talk to somebody, one of my brothers, my sister-in-law, my dad, almost every day from then on, and trying to, you know, just if they'd heard anything. And I think it was after they found her, I remember speaking to the sheriff, and I just remember him saying, don't try to picture what happened to her.
That's hard. What did you think had happened to her?
Well, I didn't think she had run away. That was always, I think the police, that's always kind of what they think. I didn't think that, so I thought something bad had happened to her. I know my brothers were out there all the time, and I know that people on horses were out there and just looking for her for months.
Yeah, Keith had told us at one point him and I believe both of your brothers had rented a helicopter or airplane and even flew over the area. So they really tried.
And I went out, I was there once, and my brother Rick took me out to where she was last seen. And I just remember thinking, this is so dense out there that somebody would have to stumble on her to find her. I mean, there's just so many little plants, and you really can't see anything out there. Yeah. And that's pretty much what happened. I can remember they interviewed one of my brothers on TV, and he said something like, "We just hope she's at a McDonald's somewhere," you know. And I never thought that she would have left.
Yeah. That's what Keith had said too. Especially one of her dogs had just had puppies recently. But what was life like for your family after all of this?
Well, her body was found 3 months after she disappeared, and we couldn't bury her for 3 months because they had to do studies, and they were trying to solve it. And I do remember her funeral was in Tucson. She's buried at the Catholic Cemetery there, and my brothers and my husband and a friend and I think Keith were pallbearers. And I remember that was the only time I've ever seen my husband cry. And the TV cameras were there. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me, was having them there, just because you could tell that they were focused on that pew, that row. But my brother allowed it because they had kept it in the news, and he appreciated that. And my dad had been mayor of Sierra Vista, so he was kind of a big fish in a little pond, and so I think that kind of kept it in the news as well.
During this time, did the police or sheriff's department ever tell you guys like who they thought did this, or tell you they had any leads?
Yeah, the only thing that we knew was the day her body was discovered, the 2 girls were attacked up on Mount Lemmon. They told us they thought that he was the one that did it, but they never tried him for her. I think they just didn't have enough evidence.
When was the last time that you were contacted by a sheriff or checked in on the case or heard anything about it?
I have never been contacted by anyone from Tucson. I was contacted by the FBI a few days after she disappeared, and I think it was because my dad told them that I had received a card from her, and they had me go down to the FBI office here in Reno and bring the card, and then they went over it and wanted to know what everything meant. And I think they were looking for some kind of meaning or something that would say what she had done or why she had done it or if she was unhappy or whatever. And, you know, I just kept, they go, well, what do you think this means? And I said, well, I just think it means what it says, you know, whatever it was. It was basically just a birthday card with a note. And so, but they never got in touch with me again. So most of the information that I learned was from my father or my brother, or newspaper articles. Someone sent me an article several years ago and it was many years after she had died, that talking about the case, just saying it was, you know, a cold case, and the sheriffs who were involved were still, you know, interested in it, but no one from Tucson ever contacted me. I think I've been back once there, and I've seen the mission, but like I say, I have not visited her gravesite.
I knew Joan very well. She was my mother's youngest sister. Joan was kind of surprised to that family. She came way later than the others. You might have heard that from Kathy. Like my Aunt Kathy, I think was out of the house when Joan was born, or just after. And my connection to Joan, and again, we'd have to go back, you have to delve into the dynamics of the family, but she was very different than the rest of the Archers. She was very warm and outgoing and had a very attractive personality. And even though she passed when I was 13, you know, even at 13, I could tell she was just super special. She was the one that always stepped up and was always happy to do so. The babysitting is one thing, but she also did a tremendous amount of work. She bled her work into her social life. She trained dogs. She loved dogs. She did obedience training. She trained guard dogs, all kinds of everything dog related or canine related she was really into. And that's where I spent most of my time with her. We would travel together and we would show her dogs. So I could spend a lot of time with her, like overnights and other things away. And she was always, I mean, you could just tell when we get to the dog shows, it's a small community and just everyone gravitated toward her. Just, like I said, a real attractive personality that people just kind of flocked to. She had a nice setup there with that, whatever you want to call them, canine community. And so she'd take me with her. And that was like, you know, for a 13-year-old, there's a huge thrill. Go to Phoenix for the weekend, show some dog, you know. It's nice. She showed and trained Shelties. I don't know if you're familiar. They're like smaller dogs with the cropped ears and pretty fluffy. That was kind of her breed of choice. And she had a dog when she first got into it. She was in high school, and for 4-H, she had to teach a dog something. And, you know, it went from there. But that dog was Toby. And Toby was a Sheltie, and she had Toby trained so well, she would let me show Toby, and I did not know what I was doing, right? And the dog would win show after show. On the obedience side, despite me costing her points and my hands were in the wrong position, she would literally come up and correct them with her muzzle. Toby was awesome, and that's where it started. And then she had a whole host of others that she would take in and train on like a foster parent basis, and then, you know, get them back to the families. You could tell she had a nice path in front of her. She was making money at something that she loved to do, and she was awesome at. Again, I don't want to harp on it. Like that family was not touchy-feely in terms of displays of affection and things like that. So she was the one kind of outlier in that regard. So yeah, all the nieces and nephews would tell you the same thing. She was the favorite, the fun one.
Were you close to Joan's parents?
I have a sister. She's a half-sister, so she's not any blood relation. Well, she's my mother and my stepfather had a baby daughter like 16 years after me, like a whole different family dynamic. And one of my jobs I was 16 was to call around the family and say, hey, my sister Emily was born. Here's the vitals, you know, the deets, however many pounds. And I remember I picked up the phone to call Grandpa, and Berta answered, and she had no idea who I was. She had no idea that we were having, you know, a baby. It was a pretty short conversation, but it, you know, kind of told me all I needed to know as a young adult. That dynamic was crazy. Joan's passing, like, kind of did that family in terms of Joan's father. You know, Joan's mother had already passed, so she had this stepmom, but it just, everything got even further fractured. How do you want to say it? Like, it's tough to put into words, but they weren't close before that. And for a while they came together to, you know, for those 2 months afterward, especially to try and find her. But then over time, everything just fell apart in the next couple of years. It was pretty fast. Everyone was trying to rationalize their role or what it should have been or could have been, and I think some of them harbor some guilt and couldn't talk about it. The family just never talked about it. My mom told me what happened, or told me when she was missing, and then afterward told me that they had found her and to prep for the funeral. But other than that, never, ever brought it up. Same for Kathy. And I do think, I really feel for Kathy because I know she wanted to do more, but it's, she was away at school and wasn't really close to Joan, to be honest. She was already an adult, off on her own. But it does, when you talk to him, the first thing comes across is kind of like rationalizing. Well, I was doing this and couldn't do it, or I was doing that, I couldn't do it. Because we all see the TV shows where the family just never stops and they just drive all the way home through the cold case and they stay in the detectives' faces, and that's what you see on TV, and that's not the way the Archer family reacted. And not just that they didn't do a lot. I know Rick and Rob, personally, were up in the air in helicopters looking, just basically took over 2 months of their lives, as you might expect. But I think a lot of people in the family were inwardly thinking, what role should I have played, or what role could I have played to help push the conviction or whatever kind of justice would have happened, if that makes sense. I didn't do the search. We were living in South Carolina at the time, so we were all the way across the country when it happened. So I didn't go for that. I went out afterward for the funeral and stuff later. And during that time, like I said, my mom or anyone in the family was just reticent to talk about it, and I at 13 did not know all the activities that were going on in those couple months afterward.
Do you remember the day you heard she was missing?
Yeah, I remember my mom took me to the local donut shop, and we sat there and we got a donut, and she said Joan went out for a bike ride and Joan didn't come back. And that was pretty much it. And at 13 I was so stupid. I was like, okay, well, let me know when she gets back. And okay, I didn't really comprehend it. I remember also that we got up and we were walking out and my mom was just dazed, and the waitress came and pounded on the glass from the inside the restaurant. And I was like, hey Mom, I think you've to the tip or something. But she didn't even pay. She was just so in the zone. We just got up and walked out. She just, those kind of communications were tough on her. She did not, again, from her normally think of as maternal or paternal conversations and caring, just wasn't entirely there, which, it's tough. It's your sister. She did not want to be there telling you. It was probably the last place in the world she'd ever want to be, is telling her, son, that favorite aunt is possibly gone forever. So I would definitely give her that. It's got to be hard. I literally said, okay, yeah, I didn't think it was a problem at all. It's oh, geez, yeah, let me know when she comes back. I'll do whatever we need to do. Very quickly that I saw, my mom lost any hope of any kind of positive outcome. I think in that next 3 months, it was all about, gosh, we got to find something. We got to know something, right? It's not going to be closure at that time, of course, but just something, because they're, totally in the dark. My mother never brought it up again. After the funeral, never, ever brought it up again. My half-sister that was born 16 years later is named after her. Her middle name is Joan. But other than that, my mom just never brought it up again. And I know the most conversation I've had with it about anyone in the family is my sister, who wanted to know who she was named after and has done her own investigation and kind of made her way to this Skaggs character on her own via the internet. But everything I've learned about the case was way afterward, doing my own research. It was painfully obvious, at least for my mother. It's multiple tragedies in one, right? You lose Joan, but then at the same time, this family dynamic was not awesome anyway. It just, everything disintegrated from the Archer side for our family. The family just broke apart. And over time, a couple of siblings came back together, is my take on it. But I remember one of the times I went back to Tucson, I called up my Uncle Rob, and he's like, oh yeah, I've talked to you in 20 years. Oh yeah. And I said, hey, this is great. I'm going to be out there. Let's get together. He's like, I don't know if I can make it for lunch. They're just not close. It's just bizarre to me. Yeah, I mean, maybe if it's just what I knew, so it's not sort of put it in context until later you see how other families operate, like my wife's family, how close they are. It's wow, I didn't know people were like that. Kathy has actually overcome a lot in terms of that dynamic, and she comes out to Philly all the time. We're her surrogate family, which I love. I would love for her to move out here and move in with us if she's ever listening. But so there's been some recovery here at the end. The other Archers didn't really make themselves available. I've read an article the lead investigator at the time, who's now retired, was adamant he knew who did it and was 100% positive in his mind. So I don't think they could have ever even developed any other suspects because they were focused on this guy.
You try not to take things personally, but that was a tough case, said Doug Whitty, now retired, who headed the sheriff's office homicide division at the time of Archer's slaying. The tough thing about the case is that I'm convinced who did it, but we were never able to get enough evidence that would allow us to get an indictment.
I gotta believe they're right, but again, it's like pre-DNA, pre-all that stuff.
What did happen? And what did the police and FBI know, or think they knew? Did they celebrate prematurely with the perceived win of taking down Skaggs? If things had been handled differently, and all the evidence was still around, we all would have answers. One thing is certain, Joan was done a disservice. And not only Joan, but maybe also Skaggs. Everyone deserves justice, for better or worse. The justice system owes us those answers. Perhaps even answers that cleared Steve Skaggs. After all, there were other violent crimes being committed around the same time. Crimes that were also similar to Joan's. Victims being raped, stabbed, and left in the desert, one of which was after Skaggs was incarcerated. For now, we have to be content with limited results from the justice system.
You know what, Mandy? I'm not kidding you. I was very disappointed in our system.
What other thoughts or ideas did your family have?
We left Arizona, and this is how she dealt. And I think the whole family. It's not like you see in movies where people rise to the occasion and like they're going to just quit their jobs and seek justice continually and harass people until it's done. It's just not the way they reacted that I saw. That family, they kind of feel a little guilt that they should have done more or could have done more and didn't. It's just my sense. I know that's how I feel. Should I be out there in Pima County and be in the investigators' faces all the time? I don't know the best way to put it. You know, like you're watching a movie and they say, "Oh, don't worry about her. She's a trooper. She's a fighter." This family wasn't that. They were the push it down deep inside and move on, close the book on it as soon as possible. And again, this is all I was a preteen or new teen, and at the time, probably weren't going out of the way to tell me any details if they came up. But I don't know. I don't know that my mom ever even talked to her brothers and Kathy about it. You know, once we left and everything, I don't think it ever came up again, to be honest, that I saw from my mom.
What do you think happened to her?
I've heard some details over the years. Kathy told me once that she had talked to the detective. One of the details is she talked to the detective and he had said at the time that she probably didn't suffer too much because one of the wounds was to the carotid artery, they could tell, and so that was fatal fairly quickly. This is what he said. Whether he was trying to make Kathy feel better or not, I don't know. I get little quips and details every now and again, but there's probably a lot. I mean, you probably know more at this point than I do about it, a good chunk of it, or all of it. I think Emily and I are both very curious about it, but not so much to torture Kathy or Rick or Rob over it. And yeah.
We all accept the small successes we're handed. When asked about Mount Lemon, Roger shares his sentiment about Skaggs being put away.
The Mount Lemon one? Yeah. That's the only thing that gave me any comfort, right? A lot of, you hear it all the time. They didn't get the BTK for all these real very important murders. They got up for this other thing. And it gave me comfort to know that he was taken out of the system or taken out of the community. Every now and again, I just get an urge to just sit down in front of the computer and just delve into what I can find on her, if that makes sense. It's just, from outside the family, it doesn't seem to make sense. Why didn't you just ask Rob or Rick? Right, they were right there. But I mean, there's still a ton of people alive in this world that, were really affected by this. So many people were affected by her loss.
What do you think Joan would be doing today?
If she was still here, so many things would be different. I think she would have been married to Keith. He always struck me, again, I was young, but he struck me as a stand-up guy and treated her very well. As I saw them interact, very respectful, very, treated her like you should treat a potential wife or a fiance, even, I had a lot of respect for him because of that. He was just kind of more mature than a mid-20-year-old should be, I thought. But she would be that, and she would have kids, and she would still be doing the dog thing. Like I said, like, just, it was so great to see that literally someone making money at what they love to do. It's like the dream come true, right? And she would just have a billion friends, and she would have kept the family. Maybe this is all aspirational thinking, but, you know, she would have helped. She would keep that glue to keep the family together, at least help in that regard. Like I said, there were multiple tragedies involved with her passing, whether it's the breaking up of that family or him moving away with Berta, or, I mean, Jesus, like, even when I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I think about Joan every time I leave my daughter somewhere, whether it's the mall or she's at camp right now. I think about it every time. Every time I take her to the bus stop or we walk to the bus stop, like, I see it. She's embarrassed of me, like, when I walk her to the bus stop, and I just can't leave her there alone, right? Like, there's these other things that come out of this that, you know, it's just none of it very good, to state the obvious, but it's a tough thing to move on from. I'm glad, as you research Joan, you've come to know that she was very special, and it is kind of getting a little bit more painful. It's not going away. It's getting a little more painful as people who cared about her and knew her, and the bridge to her memory, like, those people are passing away right now. You know, whether it's my mom or my mom's dad or whomever. You know, you lose the ability to get the stories back. Even though I would never ask my mom about it, there's always the possibility that I could. It's, you know, one of those regrettable kind of family things that didn't get said or closed the loop on before my mom passed, because, you know, she probably had a lot more info. I'm sure she did. Probably wouldn't have wanted to talk about it, but yeah, at the end of the day, Joan deserved better from everybody. She deserves justice. She deserved to be alive. The world would be such a better place with her in it as opposed to now.
Joan's case remains unsolved. If you have any information about this case, contact the Pima County Sheriff's Office. For case files, public records, and to get to know the people in our story, visit deadseriousmedia.com. Coming up next time, she was put in hospice care, so we knew she'd only had a couple days to live.
Your mom's worried about you. You should call your mom.
My name is Steve Cargill, and I was married to Shirley for 23 years.
Well, you're gonna absolutely freak out right now, because I flew out to Arizona in February and had lunch with the guy.